Hey Mob, welcome to the arena. What does it mean to go beyond becoming? What does it mean to be a black belt? I mean, the journey of tying the black belt around my waist was the ending of one journey and the beginning of another. When my coach untied my brown belt from my waist and tied a black belt around my waist, it was something that I never thought would be possible for someone like me, someone where I came from. I'd never seen anyone from my world become a black belt. I didn't even know what a black belt was growing up. I mean, yeah, I watched action movies and stuff like that, but I mean, in the 80s and the 90s, there weren't very many female action heroes that in the movies that we were watching. I mean, yeah, you had Wonder Woman and all these other ones, but it wasn't from my world. Mums, Indigenous women, girls from small towns. It wasn't in my narrative. It wasn't in my world. So the moment that Coach tied a black belt around my waist was the moment I realized so much more was possible, and that this was the ending of one journey and the beginning of another. And it was a moment in time in my journey that I'll never forget. And it was definitely a moment that was the birthing, the blossoming of so much. And it was also the planting of something that I would not understand what it was to become at the time, and the new dreams that would evolve or be born from this seed being planted. I mean, it was almost like my journey through Jiu-Jitsu had evolved into this moment where I had arrived. And yet, upon that arrival, the next journey was already unfolding. The path was appearing before me. And what does it mean to step up through the journey of becoming and taking a stand? I mean, in our last episode, we talked about being unapologetically sovereign. We talked about Serena Williams' journey of what it means to take a stand. And what does it mean to be in the arena? Because sometimes being in the arena doesn't mean you're necessarily ready or equipped to take a stand. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Shantelle Thompson. I'm a proud Bark and Jing woman, and I am the host of the Journey to Black Belt with Shantelle Thompson. And I have a black belt, but I don't feel like I'm a black belt yet. And in this podcast, we talk about beyond Jiu-Jitsu, the lessons beyond the mats. Jiu-Jitsu is an art and a principle and a practice, but also for me, what does it mean to be a black belt in life, in parenting, in culture, in dreaming, in leadership, in impact, in responsibility. And that's what I want to yarn with you about today, is that it's a process, it's an evolution, and it has its seasons. And for me, Jiu-Jitsu is more than a sport. It's always been a vehicle. It's also always been an act of ceremony and a sacred space for me, a sacred arena where I could be myself, but I could also become myself. When I first started Jiu-Jitsu, I was 19 and I was one of only two females in the gym training. And I didn't ask permission there. I was like, in this space, I'm just going to be who I am, and I also see the power and the potential of who I can become. And I showed up from that day, and that's been 20 years in the making. It's been a 20-year practice and principle. And the last 2 or 3 years, I haven't had access to that in a way that I had for the previous 17 years. And yet I'm not walking away. I'm not giving up on my dream of having Jiu-Jitsu as an arena that I can step into for as long as it's available to me, for as long as it calls me. And also I'm not walking away from this dream, this calling of being a black belt world champion, and trusting that this dreaming is bigger than me, that this dreaming is a vehicle. It will become a narrative, a platform, a movement for something and people so much bigger than me, beyond the world that I'm in and the season that I'm in. It's been a sport. Competing is something that I love, but it's also been a mirror for me, reflecting my strengths, my weaknesses, and the deep lessons of who I am becoming. I had to really sit with this and create notes for this episode, because it really took me through the different seasons, the different selves that I've been through jiu-jitsu, the experiences that I've had, the communities, the relationships. It's a very intimate sport. It's very close contact. So you get to know people very well as training partners. And the gyms that I have been a part of have been about relationships. It's not just been a sport to train to be the best in the world. It's also about meeting yourself in your life and showing up and going, who do I want to be today? Who am I going to choose to be on the mats today and in this moment? And then how does that shape the person I'm going to be once I leave the mats? And on any given day, I had a choice. Was I there to train for fun and stress relief? Or was I there to train and prepare to be the Barkingji warrior, to become a world champion, which was one of the dreams that I had? And like I said, when I first stepped foot on the mats of jiu-jitsu, being a black belt and a world champion seemed like such far off concepts that it was like, yeah, that's cool. That's a nice dream. Like, I didn't really believe it was possible for me, yet that dream kind of kept me grounded and guiding me until one day I arrived at black belt. And yet I knew in that moment that when coach wrapped that black belt around my waist, that it was just the beginning of the next season. And I was okay with that ending and that beginning and the in-between. And I'm still in that in-between of understanding what this season is going to be about. Who am I going to be about? And I want to share with you some of the deep lessons that I've learned about becoming and the being in this season of where I'm at with my black belt. So I'm 18 months into having my black belt, because it was July of 2023 that I got my black belt. And we're now in February of 2025. Wow. And when I got my black belt, I didn't have a home base to train jiu-jitsu. I still don't, and I'm still figuring that out. My training partner is a dummy in my gym. My mats are in my garage, and I'm figuring it out one step at a time. And that's what I want to yarn with you about. So I wrote something for you that I want to read to you, mob. The journey to black belt didn't end when I tied the belt around my waist. It wasn't a finish line. It was another beginning. Every challenge, every fall, every lesson along the way wasn't just about jiu-jitsu. It was about life. It was about being and becoming. It was about weaving. It was about dreaming. And it was about becoming the person I was meant to be by being who I was. We often think of success as a destination, a place we arrive at, but real mastery, real leadership is about constant evolution. It's about who we are and who we become in the process. Today, I want to talk about that process and what it means to step into the arena, not just in sport, but in life, and about the lessons that jiu-jitsu has taught me and how I apply them. Because the fight is never on the mats. It's about how we show up every day. So what does it mean to truly become rather than just arrive? I remember when I was at the height of my competitive career in jiu-jitsu, and that would have been 2013 right up until 2019. That was when the 6-year span when I won my 3 world titles. I was training twice a day. I was eating like an athlete. I was doing all the strength and conditioning. I was working a full-time job whilst trying to be the best mum I could be to my children, meeting my cultural responsibilities. Life was really, really full. And yet I'd never been more focused or aligned. And I remember working with Christian, my sports psychologist and my wrestling coach at the time. And he was big on redefining resilience and using wrestling and jiu-jitsu to shape the people that we were going to become beyond that lesson, to build levels of resilience and build concepts of ourselves that we didn't even know were possible. And he taught me the backpack technique, which was when I got to training, I had to stop and take a deep breath and check in with myself. As someone who was coming at being an athlete from a very different season of life as a mum, as an older female, I was in my 30s. I was a mum of 4. I had a full-time day job and I was funding majority of my training and my competition myself. So When I stepped up to the gym, he invited me to stop and use two techniques, a grounding technique and an anchoring technique, where to take a deep breath and check in with myself and ask myself, who was I going to be on the mats today? Was I going to be the human that needed stress relief and fun and to just be in jiu-jitsu and not focus on preparation or winning world titles or any of that sort of stuff? I was just there to be a human being that did and loved jiu-jitsu. Or did I have the capacity and did I need to take the responsibility to be there, to be the Barkanji warrior, to be the athlete that was training and prepping for world titles? Because obviously when I was taking time and financial resources and energy to invest in training jiu-jitsu, how was that contributing to my ability to take care of my family? How was my children seeing me sacrifice that time with them to be on the mats and seeing themselves as beneficiaries of me taking that time? How was I empowering others through my example and my journey? And how was I using the time that I had to progress and to grow? And then the second technique was the backpack, was to imagine all the different roles, all the stuff that I'd come to the door with before I stepped into the mats, before I even stepped into the gym, to put all that stuff in the backpack and to take it off and leave it at the door. And then after I'd grounded myself in choosing who was I going to be the human being today, or was I going to be the athlete? And then walk into the gym empty and ready to be and become with the choice that I'd made, whether it was the human being that just needed play and fun, or whether it was the athlete that was there to progress and to develop. And that's what jiu-jitsu's been for me. And that's why it's been a constant process of being and becoming. Because I mean, when I look back on what it means to become or have a black belt around my waist and feel like, yes, I have a black belt, but I don't feel like I'm a black belt yet. And what does that mean for me in this season? And what it's taught me about resilience and reciprocity and of evolution and leadership is that I thought my dreams were done with jiu-jitsu. When COVID hit in 2019, I was at the peak of my jiu-jitsu, of my business, and I was ready for things to evolve beyond me. I thought that I was on a trajectory up, that everything I'd been working for was going to fall into place. My dreams at the time were to become a fully sponsored athlete, an author of my book, and to become a paid athlete. And I would be able to let go of everything and take care of my family through being an athlete. And then COVID hit and I left Melbourne. I moved back to Mildura, and I accepted and thought that my journey of being a world champion was done, that I would eventually get to black belt, but I would do it at a slower pace because I chose to have another baby, and I chose that jiu-jitsu was going to evolve into the next season and it was going to mean something different to me, until it didn't. Until my beautiful daughter, Nacinta, decided to go on her international career of jiu-jitsu and competed for the first time in 2022 at the World Championships. And I felt that hunger wake up in me. I felt that emptiness, that there was unfinished business there. And yet I questioned my right to have that dream, because as a mum and the one funding my family and my daughter's dream at the time with the help of others, did I have the right to dream this dream? So I pushed it away. And then in 2023, I had the dream again. And then I got my black belt unexpectedly, because my coach came from America. And when I was sitting with this fire and this hunger, I'm like, it's a year on and it's still there. Why me and why this dream? And am I selfish for following this dream? And yet I knew the more I tried to ignore it, the more I tried to bury it, the more I was hurting myself. And I was breaking my own heart, because I knew the power of trusting in a dreaming and a calling bigger than myself. And it was almost confirmation, this burning hunger. And I was like, my daughter went over a second time in 2023 to compete at the World Championships. And it was like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. I'm not going to put a timeline on it, but I'm going to allow myself to dream of becoming a black belt world champion one day. But I'm not going to attach timelines to it. I'm attached to the vision, but I'm not attached to how I get there. And then in July of 2023, my coach came over, and with a week's notice, I was invited to grade for my black belt. And it opened up a whole new season for me. And by saying yes to this dreaming, it was about having the courage to accept that other things would need to evolve beyond me, and it would mean letting go of versions of myself in order to make space for this new dream. And the courage and the resilience to say that the dream is still possible, despite what I've been on over the last 18 months of being a black belt. There's still this trust, this hunger that it's there, it's possible. And now more than ever, the message is trust in its own timing. Allow it to be what it needs to be for it to become what it can be. And that's the leadership and the evolution for me in this season, into my parenting, into my business, into who I'm becoming, is allowing it to be whatever it needs to be for this season, and not attaching myself to a version of the dream or the journey, and just going, what is this moment today and what can I do to show up for that dreaming? And that's all weaving together into my parenting, into this desire for self-mastery, this hunger for self-mastery, this hunger for self-actualization and sustainability in the dreaming, in a way that my children see themselves as beneficiaries of my dreaming, that the courage to let go of plan B and C and D and trust that, to be crazy enough to believe that my journey to black belt is the pathway forward, and that all else needs to go in order for this to become possible, is where I'm at right now. And this means that letting go of this idea of arriving, that I may never arrive at black belt world champion, and yet in allowing this dream to call me forward and to guide me in how I show up and how I think and how I see myself, developing the self-concept of who do I need to be to not only win a black belt world title, but to carry that and what it actually means beyond the mats, beyond that moment, to come home a black belt world champion. It's not just about that moment becoming possible, but when it does become possible and it's actualized, how do I alchemize that and amplify it and be prepared for what it's going to mean for the stories that I'll have, the people who will look up to me, the opportunities that will open, that only I can imagine, and that will become, that the universe has planned for me. And that's where the humbleness of that a black belt is just a white belt that never quit. So bringing in the white belt mentality, always being willing to grow, being humble enough to accept that you don't need to be a master in everything to be allowed on the mats, to own your strengths, to own your weaknesses, and to own the journey of continuous learning. That is where I'm at in my journey. And letting go of evolving my concept of what it means to win, redefining it. And one of the coaches that I used to train with, Jeremy, from New Zealand, was like, win means to focus on what's important now. And if I imprint that into my mind, that in order to win means to be able to focus on what's important moment to moment, and then eventually those moments will weave together into a net, into a thread, into a piece that allows me to create a life of moments where I chose what's important over my fear and over my ego. And that will lay the foundations for a life that I could only ever, a life beyond my imaginations, and that the dreaming that I have is the foundations for what's to come next. And the biggest lesson in this season is that self-love is that discipline is the greatest act of self-love. And taking responsibility to show up for what needs to be done rather than how I feel, or rather than what I believe, and allowing action to precede belief. So a question I'd like to ask you is, where in your life are you chasing arriving at something where you say, oh, when I get here, I'll be happy, or when I get to this place, I'll be able to do that. Now, I'm not saying that that's not true, but it's like sometimes we think that we need to already be somewhere before we're allowed to do things. But in order to become the future version of yourself now, how can you become her now? How can I act How can I be a black belt in my life right now? What are local competitions that I can do? What are ways that I can be financially wealthy now? Where can I be disciplined and go every day I get up and I train at 6 a.m. And training could also be resting based off of what my capacity is, based off of where my body's at. But this idea of self-discipline as an act of self-love. And if you let go of the idea of arriving, what would change if you focused on who you're becoming rather than what you're achieving? And for me, letting go of the concept of output and instead focusing on consistency. And allowing my jiu-jitsu to be a mirror for life lessons from the mat and beyond. So how am I showing up for my training even though I don't have jiu-jitsu as a daily practice? Where can I do body-based movements? Where can I do solo drills? Where am I planning into my finances in the next 90 days to be able to go and do a training weekend? Like, where is the weaving of my black belt world championship dream up there, and how am I weaving that dream into today and the energy that I have? What steps am I taking today, and how I'm showing up for this dreaming a mirror for where my mindset's at? Where are my finances at? Like, who do I need to be? What resources do I need to have to become a person who can be a full-time athlete? So where are you at in your life, and what can you use as a mirror? What arena are you in that is shaping you, that you can practice the process of being yourself? Because here's the thing, when things are going well, it's really easy to stay consistent and faithful to a dream and to who we need to be. It's when we're under pressure and things aren't working, and that literally faith is the only thing that will keep us focused and committed. When you have a choice between being committed to your dreams or failing under the pressure, that's where, like, for example, I've been doing some training with my 15-year-old son, who is 6 foot and a 15-year-old active athlete in basketball. And I asked him to do some training sessions with me. And I'm a 41-year-old female. I haven't trained jiu-jitsu consistently in over 3 years. Actually, since 2019 was the last time I was consistent in jiu-jitsu full time. So it's been 5 years since I trained as an athlete in jiu-jitsu. Finding the courage to get on the mats with my 15-year-old son taught me so much about where my mindset was at, where my physical capacity was at, where my jiu-jitsu technique was at, and what I could work on, but also what was already working for me. And it was an exercise in faith and discipline and courage and resilience to show up to that training session. And I can tell you, I was tapping out to a lot of areas where I saw opportunities, and I was convincing myself, no, I'm too tired, I'm going to injure myself. And yet from that feedback, from that information, I can now assess and go, well, where's the next opportunity? How can I grow from this? And that was the resilience that it took to not quit on my dream, when I realized how much of a gap there is between what I need to do and the work ahead in order to become, in mind, body and soul, a black belt that can meet the season and the opportunity of becoming a black belt world champion. And the discipline to train my mind and my body to show up, even though it feels hard and impossible right now, through my finances, my workload, my mental health, the season that I'm in, the training resources, the lot. It really feels like it's just, that dream feels too impossible. So it's breathing into trusting the message that if I have the dreaming, it is possible, and letting go of attachments to how the journey unfolds and timelines is the way forward. And that's playing out in my finances, in my businesses, and the self-awareness to be able to sit with myself and accept myself around where I am choosing to show up and where I'm not choosing to show up, and accepting the ripple effects of these things, and not weaponizing this insight against myself, but using self-awareness to become soul aware. Where am I breaking my own heart? Where is my joy and my energy? Where am I lit up by my journey? Because when something lights me up and it becomes an infinite source of energy and focus, the journey finds its own momentum when you are in alignment. And these are lessons that I'm learning in my journey to black belt, in allowing the dreaming to become possible in my soul and my body. And this self-mastery, this self-leadership, self-authoring my own narrative is playing out in my business, that I'm showing up for a dream that is bigger than the resources and the capacity that I have right now. It's about showing up with what I can do from where I am and who I am, and trusting that that is enough to create process. It's about accepting that the things I need to learn, that I'm not being the CEO or the leader that I need to be within myself and my time, like the management of my time is a huge thing, and learning business fundamentals. So one thing that's really aligning with my jiu-jitsu is the need to strip it all back and go back to foundational principles and fundamentals of everything, of life, of parenting, of culture, of jiu-jitsu, of business, of finances, of self-development. What are the fundamentals and the foundational concepts and principles and practices that I can go back and work to master, that are going to allow me to actualize into the dreaming and to alchemize the experiences that I've got and weave all of these different areas together from the one self and the one experience? That if I'm showing up to self-leadership and personal responsibility, that I'm following and listening, and then allowing action to precede beliefs, that the fundamentals and the foundations, this is the work right now in order to become the person who can be the person, to be the warrior, the protector, the guardian of the journey to black belt, and who I'm going to become once I get there, but also to be able to carry on and alchemize everything that becomes possible after that. It's about self-awareness, resilience, trust, and faith. And these lessons are weaving into business. It's when a hard moment comes and I feel that narrative of I'm not enough or I'm a failure, how am I responding to that pressure? Am I leaning into anti-fragility? Am I using that moment and that lesson to build myself rather than just working towards being resilient? Yes, it's important to bounce back, but am I going to get stronger from falling down so that when I push up, I know that I can go a little bit further, I can grow a little bit more? I'm leaning into my discomfort and my capacity, and trusting that leaning in is better than pushing through. Because if I try to push through, that's when I shut down and I regress. So these are the things that are kind of seeding themselves in my journey, and the lessons that I'm kind of facing at the moment, that I'm being tested right now. Do I really want this dreaming, and am I willing to do the work to become who I need to become to do this? And how I'm handling setbacks right now is that I'm regressing or I'm retreating when it feels too hard, or I face a self-imposed failure where I'm procrastinating, or I'm allowing trauma and old wounds to stop me from taking a stand or leaning in to do the work. Because this is the thing, this is the arena where I'll be shaped, the arena where I'm willing to choose those moments where I say I want to eat more healthy, and I justify to myself, okay, I'm going to eat bread, even though I know that it makes me tired, it upsets my stomach because I'm gluten intolerant. And I justify it to myself being, I just need comfort now because I've been through this really hard experience. And by saying yes to that, I'm breaking my own heart and breaking my own trust and self-respect, because I'm hurting myself in a way that I'm setting myself up for hardship for the next opportunity. When I eat bread, it slows down my energy, it gives me headaches. But also I lose my respect for myself because I know I'm choosing old wounds and old habits over the dreaming and over the potential of the next moment. And that's where the opportunity is that when the dreaming meets the moment, what will I choose? Will I choose my pain and my past and my comfort? Or will I choose my purpose and my dreaming? And it's in these moments that the growth becomes possible. And it's been really fucking hard to face myself in the mirror and go, well, here's where you held up and here's where you chose something different. And rather than weaponizing, it's taking responsibility for the ripple effect of the consequences and the lost time every time I say no, every time I resist, every time I retreat. And it's this balance between all in its own timing and trust and faith in the universe, and also trusting that when I say yes and I show up and do the work, that I can create quantum leaps, I can collapse timelines, and that every time I say yes, the universe will meet me. And that the moment is the arena, saying yes to the dreaming, and now it's about saying yes and showing up to do the work. And that it's what does it mean to put yourself in spaces where you are going to be stretched, where you are going to be tested, and trusting that in that testing, in that stretching, this is where you will be forged, that these tests are the preparation. And sometimes the tests are to show you that you're not ready, or it's to be a mirror to show you that you're not showing up, or it's to show you that you are enough and that your readiness will come in taking the leap. And the thing is, we can be smart with the battles that we choose. There are battles that will challenge us and prepare us, and there will be challenges and battles that will break us. And you will know the difference between when you feel unsafe and uncomfortable. Because if you're choosing to fight battles that you don't have the capacity or the capability or the resources for, you're setting yourself up to fail. So for an example, training Jiu-Jitsu, training against my son. If I go in with the ego that I'm the black belt, I'm the world champion, I should be dominating and beating him, and I should be at a certain level. And yet, knowing that I'm not at that level, I haven't been training Jiu-Jitsu for 3 years. My son is 15, he's also an athlete, and not giving him the due respect for what he's bringing to the table, and allowing this version of should and this version of ego, but then also this trauma narrative of going, I just want to be enough, and by doing this, it'll feed this false sense of concept of who I have to be in order to be a black belt. And if I go into a training session with that, that's where I'm setting myself up to lose the battle, and I'm coming in from a place of ego and trauma where shoulds and ego is driving how I'm showing up. And then I injure myself. And depending on the severity of the injury, takes me even further away from my training, because now there's rehab. There's the potential strain on my relationship with my son because my training session is focused on ego rather than growth and progress. And another area where the challenges is am I paying attention to how I'm talking to myself? For me, the challenges right now is my mindset and my time management, because actually sitting down to organize my calendar to be using my time to meet my dreaming and my potential rather than this false sense of scarcity and toxic obligation, and filling my time with shit and tasks that aren't going to progress the dreaming. This is where the battles can prepare me, is when I can ground myself and breathe and go, what capacity and capability do I have? What is the most aligned action that I can take today with what I can do and who I am? Versus going, I should or I have to do these things to make progress. And if I can't do the big ego version of it, then I won't do anything at all. Or I'll allow the task list to become so overwhelming that I shut down and I feel unsafe. Whereas finding that middle ground where I'm leaning into the discomfort rather than trying to push through is the challenge in this season. Is how do I use discipline and consistency to be committed and rebuild my own self-trust that I am willing to be the person I need to be now in order to be a black belt world champion tomorrow. And in this season, I'm moving beyond survival as a concept, really learning to live and thrive through the challenges, through the opportunities that present themselves in this season and in the arena, is embracing this as the way forward, that each test is an opportunity of Am I ready? Am I saying yes? And have I learnt the lessons from previous seasons? Have I grown from the last time I met this lesson and this self? So every time I say yes to bread and having it as a comfort food or food that I love, I'm saying yes to an old version of myself, rather than saying yes to the new version of myself that goes, I want to be healthy, I want a clear head, and I want healthy gut, to treat my body with the respect that she deserves, so that we have the power and the potential to be a black belt in mindset, in body, in spirit, and in movement. And for me, thriving and living in this season is allowing it all to exist and figuring out learning how to weave it all together. The fears, the doubts, the in-between, the who I was, the who I am, and the who I'm becoming. That's the arena right now. That's the difference, is that living from survival mode is going, oh, I'll just say yes to enough for now, and that I'm not going to follow my dreaming to the full extent, that I'm willing to settle for less than what I know I'm capable of having and being. And that enough is enough, and I don't want enough anymore. I want it all, and I'm allowed to have it all. I'm allowed to be the bravest, boldest version of myself without apology. And I'm willing to do and say yes to her, to Shantelle Thompson, and all the dreams that exist. And I'm also enough as I am. Shantelle, who had the broken heart, who had the mental health experience, who is financially at the lowest that she's ever been in 10 years, that I'm building and learning while being a single mum, while recovering from mental health. And this is the preparation to ground myself in using those techniques that Coach gave me, as going, before I step into the arena, whether it's parenting, whether it's sitting down and organizing my calendar for the week, whether it's sitting down and looking at my finances, whether it's business or personal. And as an example, dealing with my trauma narrative around money, my wounds, my money wounds, my money story, my relationship with money and abundance and wealth. These are all things that this is what I need to do to physically, spiritually, and mentally prepare to become someone who can be a black belt. Is grounding myself, is ensuring that I'm well enough to be the person who can carry this dreaming. And right now, that's doing the best I can with what I've got, while it's acknowledging, if I only have an hour a week to commit to my training, what am I going to do with that hour? So like Coach said, anchoring myself in Womenjeka. So Womenjeka is a Wurundjeri word, is a Woiwurrung word from the Wurundjeri people. And Womenjeka means to come with purpose. So using Indigenous concepts and practices to indigenize myself and my training, to stop before I step through a door or before I step into a conversation or into an arena. Who am I? Who am I here to be? What is my purpose for being here? Who do I serve by being here? Who am I responsible for being here? And then allowing myself to put all the backpack, everything in the backpack that doesn't belong in this moment, and put it aside. Go in and do my business, and then when I come out, I can pick it all up again. So what is your arena? Where are you being tested? Where is your opportunity for growth? And where can you take your eye off arriving and focus instead on the journey or the progress? And where are you being called to step up and take responsibility? And how are you preparing for the battles that truly matter? I know that I'm fighting for this narrative that is worth fighting for, that I'm bigger than my trauma. I'm bigger than my pain and my fears and my mental illness. And that this is the battle, and the darkness that I've come through has been possible because I believed in something bigger than myself. That this dream of being a black belt world champion spoke to me and called to me. And that it's never been just about the belt. It's been about an opportunity to go, who could I become on the other side of this? And who else's journey becomes possible because they see me standing there as a mum in my 40s, as a woman, to go, well, if Anishan can, or if Shantelle the Barkindji warrior can, if Shantelle the mother can, then I can too. So where in your journey you're chasing a finish line or embracing the process. Where can you show up? Where can you get up, stand up, and show up into an area of your life? What's an arena where you, by stepping into it, there's a battle there, there's a fight there, but you know that by showing up for that fight, you're going to be prepared for what's to come next. Is it your health? Is it your finances? Is it in sport? Is it in leadership? Is it in your relationship with yourself or your children? Where is your opportunity to become the person and own the arena of what it's going to take to step into who you need to be around becoming the warrior? These are the lessons that I'm learning. These are the experiences that I'm having in my journey to black belt. I hope they land. I hope they lead. I hope they serve. I hope they resonate with you in some way. And if they do, please hit the like or subscribe button wherever you're listening to this, wherever you're viewing this, and leave a comment and let me know what landed for you or what you'd like to hear more of. Big love. This is the Journey to Black Belt with Shantelle Thompson, Bark and Jiu Warrior.